Bonjour, my name is Matt, and I am located in beautiful Colmar, France right now. This is in the Alsace region of France. In this video, I want to share with you 5 villages that you can see if you come to this area and tell you a little bit about what to look for. So my family and I spent all day yesterday exploring the area. I'm a little fortunate in that we have some locals here who are on job assignment and they kind of know the area. So they've gotten us to a few of these off the beaten path locations that you can check out. So the first city to know about is Strasbourg, France. Now this is, I believe, the largest city in the area and the most commonly visited. I've seen quite a few other videos out there on YouTube about Strasbourg, France. So I'm gonna let you check those out because we actually skipped Strasbourg so that we could get to some of these other hidden gems. And so I haven't been there, but the next city I want to tell you about is Colmar. So I'm standing in Colmar, France right now. This is just a delightful little town with a canal that runs through it and a lot of side streets that you can go explore. And so there's a lot of actually different Christmas stores here where you can buy these little trinkets and stuff, and then they have a beautiful Christmas celebration every year. It's got a huge church. They're actually doing construction on the church right now, but it's got a lot of area that you can explore. So we spent some time last night here just walking around the town at night, which was really cool because you kind of want a little bit of that night vibe when you come to some of these places. And so there were a lot of restaurants and people just out drinking and eating and having a great time. It was too dark for me to shoot a video, so I came over here in the morning. You can see the sun is rising behind me, hitting these buildings, these gorgeous buildings behind me. Colmar is also the birthplace of the man who created the Statue of Liberty. So they have a museum to him here, as well as a replica of the Statue of Liberty in the town nearby. Now the next village that we visited was called, I believe it's called Ribeauville. Now I looked up the pronunciations for these cities online, and so this is what I think it's called, but I could be wrong. These are French words. I'm surely hammering the language here, but a little town called Ribeauville. Ribeauville was fun because it has this just gorgeous little village that my understanding is that's kind of what Disney's Beauty and the Beast was based on, was Ribeauville. And so you can just walk up and down the town, and one of the really cool things is as you're walking up the street, the town is nestled at the base of the mountains. As you're walking up the town, you can see at the top, right up at the mountains there, a castle, the ruins of a castle that are kind of framed in by some of these historic buildings in the city. And so that is just a really fun town. We got something to eat there at the bakery, and of course there's lots of shops and treat places and restaurants and stuff like that. So Ribeauville was a wonderful little village. The next little village that we visited is called Riquewhir. Again, I could be hammering that. It's got a W in there, so I'm not sure if it's pronounced with the German V or if it's pronounced W, I'm not sure, but I think it's called Riquewhir. And this was even smaller than Ribeauville. And what they've done is completely blocked off the town to traffic. So both of these have little cobblestone streets that you walk up and down and just admire the incredible cuteness of the town. But this one, they've actually, I believe, shut down to all traffic, where Ribeauville, you do have cars coming through occasionally. This one, you walk through this little building that's kind of a ceremonial entrance to the town, and then you just walk up to the end of the street and back, and there's gelato shops, and we got our kids a gelato while we were there. That was really good. And there's kind of little sections where you can just sit and enjoy the town, little shops, all that stuff. But really just, wow, a beautiful experience to visit that town. Okay, and then finally, the last town that we visited was called Eguesheim. Eguesheim is a little different than the other two towns because it's laid out in a circle, and it's not a circle like a lot of these little towns you get that were kind of castle towns, or they were enclosed in with a wall for protection. This one doesn't have a wall. I don't know if it did at one time or not, but it's kind of laid out in a circle. So what's kind of cool about this one is you walk around the circle, and the circle is just a very narrow little cobblestone street lined with houses, and people still live there, and there's restaurants and little shops there as well. But this one felt even more remote than the other ones. I think it's probably less visited, and there was just hardly anybody there when we visited. And you just walk around the town through the circle, and then you go into the middle of town to the town square, where there's a beautiful fountain. Again, churches and just all these amazing buildings. I'm probably not even doing it justice because I don't know all the stories behind these fountains and buildings and all that, but it was just gorgeous. Really, really amazing place to visit. We just loved our time here in these little villages. Okay, I apologize, I had to move the setting here. I have the entire town to myself. There is nobody here. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, right at sunrise, and yet the only work truck in town pulled up right next to where I was filming, so I'm sorry I've moved over here, but it gives you another beautiful shot of the town here that you can see. Again, I'm in Colmar. So I've covered the 5 villages that you can visit here in Alsace. Now there's many villages, there's over 70 villages. So those are the 5 most popular from my understanding. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about some of the things to look for if you do visit Alsace. So this kind of gives you a feel for the context and the character of the area. The first thing to look for here is the blend of Germanic and French influence in this area. So this area has gone back and forth between Germany and France, and as a result, kind of has a blended culture. They call it Alsatian culture from my understanding. And now most of the people we met here, they speak French, but you can kind of see in the architecture, there's some of these half-timbered buildings that are more along the lines of the German style, as well as some other types of architecture that are more along the lines of the French style. So that's kind of cool. And from my understanding, this area has not always fit in with both countries or either country, but that's kind of one of the cool things is that this blend, this Alsatian culture. Okay, the second thing to look for is stork nests. Yes, there are huge nests that you can see all up above you as you walk through some of these little villages, and they are stork nests, and they're really big. Some of them weigh more than a ton. And this area has a long history with the stork, which is kind of interesting. I looked this up last night because I was kind of wondering what's the deal with the stork nests. And then as you walk through the towns, you'll see little shops that are selling storks. Even like the Christmas shop sells Christmas little villages with stork nests on top. And so like in the churches and the buildings, you'll see some big old stork nests up top. And so we thought that was super cool. Now their story and their history of this is this was the area where storks would come through as they migrated. But in the 1970s, their numbers were dwindling big time, and they only had a few that were left here. And so they began this movement in the 1980s to bring back the stork, and they've done so successfully. And now I think there's over 1,000 storks that stay here in this area, and they don't even migrate anymore. I think some of them are probably fed by the local towns and people and all that. Some people will build these big stands up on their houses to get the storks to come and stay at their house, you know, build their nest at their house. But it's really cool. As you walk through the towns, again, up on top of the churches and some of the towers, you can see these big stork nests. And my understanding is they feel that the stork is a symbol of good luck. And of course, fertility, because the storks bring the babies. So we saw one little statue of the stork carrying a baby. That was kind of fun. So anyway, check out the storks and look for the stork nests if you visit. So that's pretty cool. Okay, the third thing you want to look for is the castles. So there are over 500 castles in this area, which is really cool. Now, the area is nice because there's kind of a flatter valley plain, and then there's a little mountain range over on the edge. And so some of the cities are tucked into that mountain range. And the castles were a lot of the castles were built up on that mountain range, kind of overlooking, you know, they were built there for fortification, obviously, and for defense. Apparently, the wealthy people were only there for a couple hundred years, and then they came down into the villages, and the castles kind of got left behind. And so I don't know that any of them are really, really well taken care of, but you can visit these castles, and of course, it's just cool to see them up on the mountainside there. Okay, the next thing to look for if you visit this area is water. So they have all these fountains, these beautiful, gorgeous fountains in the town squares of these places. Most of these places don't have like one central town square, but as you walk through, there'll be little squares throughout the city, and you just can stop and check out the fountains there they have running water. And then here in Colmar, you can see behind me this little canal. This is called Little Venice or Petite Venice. And so they're billing themselves as kind of the Italian version or the French version of Venice. And they've got little boats that you can ride here, and so that's pretty cool. And so, you know, just take a look at the water formations and stuff like that they have here, which is pretty fun. Okay, the final thing you want to look for if you visit this area is the vineyards. Now you can't miss these. They are all over the countryside. My understanding is they call this wine road, and they have an actual wine route that you can drive that's about 100 miles long from village to village, and try out different wineries if you want to. And you can even bicycle that route. So I saw some people bicycling that route as well. And they are just all over the place. It's really, really beautiful country. You'll kind of think that you've died and gone to heaven if you visit here. Just really enjoyable to drive around. So I would recommend driving around from these villages. It takes you about 30 minutes to an hour to do each one. Maybe a little bit more here in Colmar. And again, I didn't do Strasbourg, but that would also take probably a little bit longer to do because these are two cities that are a little bit larger than the other ones. But wow, you could do a lot worse than spending a day in Alsace, France and visiting these little villages.